few years ago, I did something quite stupid. In fact, I probably did a lot of stupid things, but I want to talk about one specific stupid thing in particular, one related to my general theme of digital preservation, and not, say, anything that may have happened on or around the premises of the old Frogmortons. No, in this case, I was at home, and while there, I took a bunch of CDRs, labelled things like Internet, Internet 2, and Internet 4, and I placed them in a bin. This is because, like most people my age, I was too busy frittering away my money on things like shoelaces and light bulbs to be able to afford a large enough dwelling to continue storing large stacks of slowly rotting CDRs. And it was throw away those, or lose the companion disc to Core Java 2 fundamentals. After all, they were just CDs of files I'd downloaded from the internet between 1998 and 2003. Nothing that could help me get to grips with the exciting world of Java 1.3. Nothing that might be of interest to future generations, or even just future me. Nothing that would be deleted from the internet long before the Internet Archive was able to index it. So anyway, that was a stupid idea, and yet it got us through that whole awkward intro section of the video without me having to make a silly expression and wear a pair of cheap wolf ears. Let's take a sharp left and play some Midtown Madness. One of the things I've always wanted from PC gaming is something that does for cars what Microsoft Flight Simulator did for aviation. To take an ordinary car and drive it around an ordinary place, with physics that are maybe a little short of study level, but close enough to the real thing, you can forget it's only virtual reality. Numerous games have come close but missed the final element. Euro Truck Simulator 2 has the map, but doesn't have the physics or the cars. Test Drive Unlimited had the map and cars, but didn't have the handling. And Forza Horizon would be so close if it didn't insist on troops of roaming drivatars interrupting your motoring every few seconds to crash your party. Literally, in most cases. Midtown Madness came very, very close. It even featured the same lakefront area of Chicago that was familiar to anyone who played contemporary versions of Microsoft Flight Sim. Handling was... well, we'll get to that in a moment, but the cars at least had vaguely realistic top speeds and acceleration. But most importantly, it let you free roam the city, in ordinary everyday traffic, between its more usual checkpoint races and challenges. The vehicle selection also tended toward the satisfyingly mundane. Not only were there ordinary cars like a Cadillac and a new Beetle, but you could get behind the wheel of a truck or a municipal bus. Remember that GTA 3 was still 2 years in the future at this point, and while Driver came out the same year, its cities were much more primitive, and its cars much more fictional. Does it hold up today? Well, there's a problem. It's not a Midtown Madness problem, but it is a driving game from 1999 problem. Something I've mentioned a few times in previous videos is the differing attitudes towards car games between now and the turn of the century. You should go and watch those videos after this one. I hear they're quite good. This shift is something I've decided to call the Great Simcade Shift. The point at which any game featuring a car will model handling to at least the fidelity of Gran Turismo 2, because in a post-Grand Theft Auto free world, driving cars is expected to be part of the standard gamer skill set. But Midtown Madness predates this era. It is from the era where cars in games that weren't explicitly sims were expected to go when you press the up arrow, stop when you press the down arrow, turn left when you press the left arrow, turn right when you pressed the right arrow, and maybe, if the game was really advanced, make a skid sound if you were going too fast as you did so. This was fine for the time. Good, even. But hold up, it does not. This is a game that's crying out for its springs and tyres to be swapped out for something a little more realistic. I'm talking about it with modern expectations though. This was a decent game in its day, even if you only counted what came in the box. And here's where I get to the point I'm going for. 1999 might have been before the great Simcade shift, but it was right in the middle of another seismic shift in computing. In 1999, we were starting to get used to the idea of stringing a cable from computer to telephone socket and asking the internet for ways to extend the longevity of our games, decent or otherwise. Also, cheat codes and trainers. You know, to shorten the longevity of our games. The late 90s was a difficult and conflicted time, okay? There's a reason we bought all those pop-punk albums. As part of this internet support, Angel Studios did something that seems odd by today's standards of lockdown games, paid DLC, and extensive monetization, but was entirely normal at the time. They released a development kit that could take 3D models and convert them to the game format, which, in another example of entirely normal for the time, was difficult to use, required professional 3D software to create models with, and had no instructions for creating those all-important 2D dashboards. I think I managed to change the horn sound of their example car once. Which meant that, while none of them were Timberwolf authored, the internet was soon teeming with sites offering downloadable cars for the game. Early cars were very basic, including this General Lee with an inexplicable Subaru flat 4 engine sound. But it didn't take long before creators mastered the art of adding dashboards and vaguely correct engine sound, and uploaded those full-featured cars to their favoured sites. Sites hosted on GeoCities and Angelfire. Oh, right. Have I just tied back to the intro here? Yes, so when I thought to myself, I should do a video on Midtown Madness, I then thought, alright, but how are you going to put a Timberwolf spin on it, and cover it in a way that's not already been done hundreds of times? Which got me to thinking that one of the essential gameplay experiences of Midtown Madness in the early 2000s was filling it full of these mod cars and driving around in them. Off I went to find all the old Midtown Madness sites to download all those cars I used to have. Oh. Well, I'm sure the files are still on one of those CDs I so diligently burned and then threw away. Ah. I found one Midtown Madness 2 site, which had a few cars for the original. But that was missing almost all the ones I remembered. Luckily, I had 2 pieces of information squirreled away in the old grey matter. One was the name of a car creator, QWERTY_86. The other was a car I was sure I had in the game, but couldn't find on the internet. A late 70s Cadillac. Searching various combinations of these data points gave me nothing in the way of more car downloads. And while I got some further leads on URLs to type into the Internet Archive, very few of the zip downloads had been successfully crawled, most of which were only save games and small configuration mods. But I did get some more names that sounded distantly familiar. Paul_7, Tech_Exacto. This took me to a French fan site, which had only a small collection of cars, but featured many of the ones I was missing. The Timberwolf collection, circa 2001, was starting to take shape. Maybe it was time to start trawling eBay for a Thrustmaster T2. Ideally one with a broken bungee cord, for a fully authentic experience. But not yet. I was still missing many of the cars I remembered. I had one last card to play. Forums. Thankfully, within the first few pages of trawling, I found what I was looking for. A thread talking about lost mods, and where to find them. One significantly better plotted, and easier to follow, than other media about things and where to find them. But here came another unpleasant shock. Not the political views of the people who wrote it, but one which made me feel really bad about throwing those CDs out. This was a long-lived thread, but nearly every link posted prior to 2019 was dead. Gone. One of those links did give me something a little more promising. A server error, rather than a domain holding page or hosting provider 404. By going up to the root domain, I was able to discover an archive. It was bare bones, and I wasn't sure if it was complete, but it did have the last few files I was missing. Which is worrying. I did not have a big Midtown Madness car collection. Most of my attention went on Carmageddon 2 mods, because you could smash them up and flap the doors on command. The state of which is just as fragile, but let's concentrate on one game at a time here. At the time, I only downloaded a few of the most popular mods, and yet reassembling even that small and not particularly obscure Midtown Madness collection was hard. I'm hoping this is something which is getting easier rather than more difficult, but it only takes just one of those sites I used going down to leave a huge hole in what's available and discoverable that might never be filled. But until then, here we go. This is that 1979 Cadillac. I loved driving this around. The car as simulated is not particularly good at cornering, nor is it particularly fast. And that made the game feel so much like that flight simulator for cars goal I was chasing that I couldn't resist its charms. Especially the interior, with the classic federally mandated 85 mph speedometer. Okay, 95 in this one for some reason. I don't know about you, but for me this seems entirely counterproductive as a way to prevent speeding. I drive around in a car with a speedometer that reads to 160, and never feel the need to see how close I can get on the public road. The moment I see one of these, I just want to find out how much of my driving time I can spend with it pegged to the far end of the scale. I feel a Timberwolf challenge coming on. Just how long can I drive in heavy traffic with my speed? Quite literally off the end of the chart. Okay, let's do this. Oh, who cares about green lights? Let's go. Go. The aim is to get it up to 95 and then never slow down. Ever. Come on, you can do this, car. This is possible. Uh-oh. Stay there. Yes. 95, right. How long can I hold that? Oh, no. Oh, traffic. Help. Help. Nobody. No, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. Ah, bus. Oh, well. There we go. It was going so well, wasn't it? Turns out that in the middle of the city, trying to stay above 95 miles per hour in a car which is both slow and not very good at handling is not an easy task. Oh well. Silliness aside, the mods which appealed to me most were these ordinary cars. Things you saw everyday characters in films drive, even if not in your local neighbourhood. Partly this is because Midtown's physics engine approached the limits of its fidelity far more quickly when anything sporty was involved, but also because culture was still heterogeneous enough 20 years ago that America felt like a sort of strange parallel universe, where the suspension was soft, the gearboxes were automatic, and the speedometers only read to 85. Of course, returning to it years later, I can also find some of the everyday cars I've driven in, well, the everyday. Like the box-shaped legend of ultimate durability and glacier-like acceleration, the Volvo 240. A car so slow, you have no hope of making a jump over the river. I mean, that has to be tested now, doesn't it? Okay, here we go. I said this wasn't realistic, but this is a pretty good simulation of trying to accelerate in a 2-litre Volvo 240. No turbos. No sportiness. Come on, 60. 70, yes, you can do this. Will the bridge go up by the time we get there? Will this just be really unimpressive because there's nothing to jump? Come on, bridge. Yes! Yes! Oh! My word! That was good. Is that the new Bluesmobile or what? Well done, Volvo. As Midtown Madness grew older, the modding community started looking for something more ambitious than merely allowing some idiot in anime ears to live out his childhood fantasy of driving an old Volvo off a jump ramp. Angel Studios had released this small demo map, called Super Squeeze Play, but projects to supplement the base game's Chicago with something of the same size and scope as the original game's city ran into dead ends. Either the tooling wasn't up to it, or the sheer amount of modelling and optimisation work was beyond a solo creator, with limited documentation on how to go about creating a whole city. All 7 created this, Poolville, which proved creating a custom map was possible if you weren't Angel Studios, but it's still more of a proof of concept than a functional playfield. And then Archipelago happened. This arrived in the sunset years of Midtown Madness 1. But what an achievement! The elusive goal had finally been reached. An add-on map that came close to the scope of the original game's Chicago, while offering its own unique character. There may have been a few visual glitches, and it wasn't quite as coherent as the original game's map, and finally traffic didn't extend beyond these parked cars at the side of the road. But this was created by people working for free, and thankfully, it has been preserved, even if some of the steps along the way are missing. So a happy ending as I drive off into the sunset in my Chevrolet Caprice? For Midtown Madness, possibly. There are sites out there still carrying the torch, and while it's no longer as easy as browsing a web ring, I was still able to assemble most of the highlights. While getting the game to run on Windows 10 was a challenge, and I never quite got the graphics to look right, the Open 1560 project supplies a replacement executable, which works fine. It's what I'm using here. But the number of dead links I encountered on my journey suggests the world surrounding Midtown Madness is still in a precarious situation, and with many of those preserved downloads hidden behind captures and login gates, it's entirely likely they will not be crawled for the Internet Archive. Which is why we don't throw our CDRs in the bin until we've backed them up to something else first. And do that last bit sooner rather than later, if you still have any. Those things are rotting away as we speak.